Hello, everyone, and thank you to all of you around the world for joining us today. I'm beaming to you from Chicago, and while I'd much rather be enjoying the weather and tacos of Austin this week, of course, our lives are still largely run through screens, so I'm just grateful we have a chance to do this. I'm Baiju Shah, Chief Strategy Officer at Accenture Interactive, and I'm joined by the inspirational Allison Peterson today. She's the Chief Customer Officer at Best Buy, and together we're going to reflect on the last year. We'll explore what comes next, and we'll discuss why it's so important to become a business of experience, to not only survive, but to find new growth and new relevance to people's lives. I've had the privilege of working with Allison and her teams to do just that at Best Buy. But before we get to our conversation, I want to share a bit about our recent research about how becoming a business of experience is central to the new growth formula. The last year has felt like a decade. It has stressed every part of our lives. And now, as vaccines are being rolled out, and as we look forward, organizations are seeking to pivot from pandemic recovery back to growth. But many are realizing their growth formula needs to be recalibrated, perhaps completely redesigned. Why? Well, to understand, we don't have to look further than our own lives. The last year has changed the structure of everything we experience. Now, almost everything is up for reimagination. How and where we work, how we shop, even how we engage in our relationships, personally and professionally. Many of our new behaviors and values are structural, and they will stay with us, as will the pace of continued change. For each of us, there's an increasingly sharp focus on products, on services, and brands, and their role, their relevance in our lives as customers and employees. As everything we experience is up for reimagination, you could say we're already entering a new Renaissance era, an experience renaissance. This presents a massive opportunity for those who don't just observe the shift in customer expectations, but shape-shift their organization to create new mutual value with their customers and employees through meaningful, authentic experiences. Business leaders recognize this. In fact, in our research, we found almost 80% of CEOs say they feel the need to deeply reimagine how they engage with and treat their customers, as consumers, as employees. That feels right, and it's actually quite encouraging. But the question is how? How do you do this? How do you create relevance in people's new lives? How do you pivot back to profitable growth when the traditional growth formula is just that, traditional? We've identified a route that focuses on experience. And this route requires companies to push beyond what we think of as traditional customer experience or CX. We're talking about an evolution to what we call business of experience or BX, where experience and customer obsession is not just a workshop or a work stream or about optimizing a single touch point. It's a new way of working. It's a top priority across the entire C-suite. And it pays off. We found that companies that operate as a business of experience grow their profitability 6 times faster than their peers, and that growth is durable. An example of the business of experience in action is Farmers Insurance. They launched a new renters insurance platform called Toggle from scratch. By digging deep into millennials' new lifestyles, needs, attitudes, not just for insurance, but for safety and protection overall, Toggle was able to build a differentiated service. It's a new experience that was truly shaped by the people who will use it. And it absolutely delivers against some of those unmet customer expectations, like the need for radical simplification and easy customization by each individual, enabling them to keep up with their ever-changing life. It's a relevant, it's an authentic product, and it's really designed for the next era. So we've identified 4 winning ways to help business leaders realize the promise of BX. Leading companies, so those companies that are independently performing well in terms of financial growth and business cycle endurance, are far more likely to take the following actions, enabling them to consistently outperform peers who don't. First, BX leaders obsess with continuously understanding human needs, and they use those needs as their strategic compass. This is really about building organizational empathy. The leaders go beyond traditional customer segmentation or market research, and they bring together all customer data, quant and qual, to form a complete view. And of course, customer needs will continue to evolve, often unpredictably. beyond the pandemic, so it's so crucial for companies to invest in ways to uncover customers' unmet needs, both big and small. Leading companies are in fact twice as likely as others to say they have the ability to translate customer data into actions. The second BX action is cultural. It's really about making experience innovation an everyday habit. BX leaders view innovation beyond incremental gains, and they've moved beyond what's often a bias to copy from peers. They view innovation as a multi-layer process that occurs at the feature, the service, and the business levels, with each level reinforcing the others. And they see customers and employees as crucial collaborators in the innovation process. Leading companies, it turns out, are more than twice as likely to have the agility to pivot towards new products, new interactions, and new propositions that deliver value and relevance to their customers versus their peers. The third action is to infuse BX thinking throughout the organization. This is really about the operating model and new ways of working. Every part of the business must be interconnected to form one customer-obsessed unit. Experience is the company's North Star, and it's no longer just the responsibility of the CMO or COO, it's everyone's business. And this often requires calibrating the core levers, like how you measure performance. The final BX action is to sync the strategic focus across your tech, your data, and your human agendas. Too often, these are three different agendas. You have one for experience, one for analytics, and one for cloud. BX leaders connect the three by design, understanding what new experiences can be enabled through the new tech and data platforms. And they're clear what new AI and cloud platforms are needed to enable the new experiences that actually drive growth. 61% of BX leaders in our studies said their company has a clear view of which technology platforms they need to leverage to remain competitive, compared with only 27% of their peers. So those are the four winning ways, the crucial ingredients in the new growth formula. But the question for all of us and for all of you, fundamental question, is how do you reimagine your business? How do you reimagine your brand through the lens of what experience you redefine? And becoming a business of experience is absolutely a journey. So what does that journey look like? Well, let's bring in my friend, Allison, now to discuss how the journey is coming to life at Best Buy. Allison, thank you so much for being with us. Clearly, Best Buy's been on a journey, and actually you've been on your own personal journey. I'd love for you to introduce yourself and talk a little bit more about your remit as Chief Customer Officer, perhaps by starting, how do you explain what you do to your kids and your family?
Thanks, Baiju. I'm very happy to be here today. How do I explain my job to my kids? This is a good question. So my daughter is 16 years old, and so she comprehends most things in the world these days. And my son is 7. So I might explain it to them two different ways, but maybe I'll try it on you. So what I tell my daughter and what I tell most people is that the remit of our group is to unlock customer obsession for the company. And what I would say to my 7-year-old is it's mommy's job to listen to and hopefully help meet all of the needs of our customers and what they really want.
I love it. So helping customers, customer obsession. I mean, it's probably as simple as you can get. I have tried to explain what I do to my kids, and your explanation is much better for your kids. My kids just look at me like I'm crazy, but forget about me. So why does a company like Best Buy need a chief customer officer? You guys have been customer obsessed for many, many years. What's new, or what really drove the impetus for creating the chief customer office?
Yeah, so it's a great question. As you mentioned, we are on a journey, and our journey is one from evolving from being kind of customer aware to customer obsessed. And my role is fairly new in the organization. My role in the customer office were established as part of as a direct report to the CEO back in April. And so that was, really 1 month into the pandemic. And the reason for that was our intentionality around putting the customer at the heart of everything we do and kind of at the tip of the strategy sphere. And it really aligned with a lot of our goals throughout the pandemic. So we had 3 key guiding principles as we went through and are still navigating the pandemic. The first is to really keep our customers and our employees safe, first and foremost. The second is around really protecting the employee experience. And then the third is really around coming out of this a vital and vibrant company. And so when you think about all of those guiding principles, this idea of putting the customer and the employee at the heart of it really made a ton of sense. And so here we are today, kind of working through our journey as a group.
Oh, it makes a lot of sense, and I really like the three principles. There is already a couple of insights here. If I understood correctly, you said you really took on the job in the middle of the pandemic, which is interesting. We should talk about that. But you also report directly to the CEO, and this idea of you in the office really infusing the idea of customer obsession in the heart of everything you do. Can you just talk a little bit more about the dynamic between you and Corey, the CEO?
Oh, sure. Corey's an amazing, amazing leader for anyone that's had the opportunity to hear her speak or work with her. What I love about Corey is if you take our first guiding principle, she embodies that. It didn't take a pandemic for her to want to prioritize the employees and the customers first. And so that is who she is every day. And so it is a true gift and joy to be able to report to her, if I'm totally honest, because to have a boss that is so open to listen and learning and driving change on behalf of our customers and our employees makes my job a whole lot easier. We joke all the time, anytime my team sends something out, I know that I need to read it as carefully as anyone because she will have read it and digested every ounce of it. And that just speaks to her appetite to learn in this space and to evangelize everything we're doing on behalf of those two constituents.
Okay. And I actually think this is a key learning that we found across sectors, which is organizations accelerate the route to become a business of experience and really use experience if the CEO is on board and actually a personal advocate. And I actually think you have that at Best Buy. So I think that's a really key and important learning. One of the key things you mentioned is that you picked up the job at the beginning of the pandemic, really. And one of the major challenges we've been seeing with customer experience is that it's hard to keep up with the pace of customer demands. Many organizations are like out of sync, they're too rigid, and they've really found themselves moving at a pace that is slower than customer expectations. And so maybe you can just share a little bit about how you've had to broach that pace, the rhythm of the organization versus the rhythm of pace of change with customers, and how you've been able to do that during the middle of the pandemic.
It isn't easy, and I think we've learned a lot by practicing. But I would say that trying to stay as in tune with the customer as possible and even get to a place where we're anticipating their needs is half the battle. I think we are constantly pulse checking what is happening with a customer, what is going on with what they need from us, and how can we better meet those needs? And then almost taking a step back and saying, and what's happening in the environment? What are our consumers and our employees? Every time I say consumer, know that I also mean employee, but what are our customers navigating in terms of the world they're living in? And you can imagine that has been a lot this last year between the volatility of all the volatility that's happening and how we can watch how their sentiment has evolved literally daily based on what's happening with the virus or what's happening with the economy. And so being in tune with what's happening in the world is critically important as we make decisions. And then finally, just kind of taking a step back and trying to remove those barriers that help us respond to those things. So a good example would be, are there policies in play that just run counter to what we're hearing from what an employer or customer needs based on what's happening in the world? And so we've tried to be really in tune with trying to remove those barriers. And so by thinking about all of those things, we've tried to stay as nimble as possible. Like I said, my team puts out a daily communication on what's happening with the customer in terms of in the world, so that we can stay linked to what their evolving needs and more importantly, their expectations. And then it's creating a fluid enough operating model to be able to ingest that. So I think that's been more of the art is how do we make ourselves nimble enough operating at such scale to be able to ingest kind of those evolving customer needs.
Yeah, and it makes sense to bring those insights to the organizations. As you said, you're trying to infuse customer thinking into the entire organization. Can I just ask, when you're sending out these daily emails, what informs them? How do you guys keep the pulse of what the customers are feeling and needing right now?
Yeah, some of it is proprietary, and then some of it is just what data is out in the world using sources like, that even you are publishing on where are consumers at. So we have people that are daily scurrying all of those places to be able to package for our leaders a way for them to easily digest kind of the headline news around what's happening. It could be in our industry, it could be in other industries. We also have people that sit on lots of calls, learning from our peer sets, or other industries around how are they navigating things. So we really do try to, like I said, there's some days where there's lots of news, some days a little bit less, but the team does have a daily email just trying to represent kind of the state of the customer.
For those folks that aren't necessarily familiar or maybe haven't visited a Best Buy store in the last year or during the pandemic, maybe share with the audience what are some of the changes you've made over the last year, and what are some of the practical changes that the audience would see if they walked up to a Best Buy now.
So yes, the world does not look the same in a Best Buy today. I'd like to think that we really leaned into, once again, those guiding principles. And I guess the first thing I would start by talking about is the way we've executed around safety. And we have required masks in our store for anyone shopping in the store environment. We have all new protocols for entering a customer's home, things like a pre-call with customers to tell them what to expect. I would say that we also have, by and large, communicated much more transparently with customers on what to expect in all of our experiences. So there's so much uncertainty based on everyone doing it a little bit differently that we want to create total transparency to the experience. And that we've heard from customers, has been incredibly important. And then we've also leveraged, a lot of digital tools to help cross-channel. So whether that's being able to queue customers digitally, or we've implemented a customer host at the front of our stores to be able to help customers understand the experience and also be able to get to what they need to do when getting there, so we can make the experience as seamless and safe as possible. So safety has been a huge, huge element of a big change with us over this last 11 months. I think also the way you can receive your products or pick up your products from us has evolved dramatically. We rolled out our curbside pickup in the beginning of the pandemic chain-wide within about 48 hours. And that has been a whole unique and new experience. We have same-day delivery. We also have fulfillment hubs that we've turned our stores into more fulfillment hubs to be able to meet the needs quickly that customers have. And digitally, obviously, not only has the digital experience evolved, digital tools have evolved, but digitally, to be able to chat, to be able to have a video consultation, all the different ways that customers want to engage with us. So I would say our omni-channel prowess has evolved significantly, and the way that channels interplay to support one another based on what the customer is trying to achieve is probably one of the biggest things that we're proud of in terms of an evolution.
Oh, that's incredible, and I just want to pick up on one specific point that you made in there. It's the counterexample to organizations having a difficult time keeping up with the pace of change. You've done many things, but the one that I heard very clearly was around curbside pickup, and if I heard you correctly, it was 48 hours. 48 hours, you rolled that out in a new, safe way across all the stores. On the one hand, that's very impressive. On the other hand, it almost sounds unbelievable that you could do that with the scale that you have. So can you just take us, behind the curtain a little bit? And how is that possible that you could pull off something like that in 48 hours?
Yeah, it was, I think we've amazed ourselves a lot of what we've been able to accomplish with a lot of focus. And so, out of necessity, we really, in order to prioritize safety, we really pivoted to this curbside model. And, we removed customers, we stopped going into customers' homes. We really proactively made some decisions to just go back to that first priority guiding principle around keeping employees and customers safe. And, we had curbside running in about 200 stores. prior to that date. And, I think what we tried to do was quickly map the customer and employee experience and understand how it would work together. I will never forget the call. I think there was 50 people on a call with our team facilitating, just trying to get at the heart of the experience and just map it all the way through. And like I said, this idea of mapping the employee journey and the customer journey simultaneously was really powerful because we could see where there were going to be pressure points or where there were opportunities. And so having everyone have that shared understanding of that process from the beginning was incredibly important. And then we went and our operational teams and the teams that executed this in the field are truly the heroes because they did an amazing job. But it's worth noting that we have since iterated on that experience a ton. And so while we launched that experience in 48 hours, we immediately heard, by creating the right feedback loops, where there were opportunities in the experience. And we started iterating and adjusting real time. And you can see manifestations of that today. We heard that, people were a little confused when they got to the store what to do. So we clarified additionally some of the communication. We heard they didn't know where to go or where to park, especially once the stores reopened. So we created specific zones for them to park with signage. We heard that, there was times where it was more crowded or less crowded. And so we created visibility via the app to be able to tell customers, when the volume was going to be higher or lower, so they could anticipate how much time they would need to spend. And so this idea of this feedback loop, continuing to iterate on the experience, and PS, the whole time we've been executing it, they've loved it. But there was just so much opportunity to get better and better and better. And, it's one of those things, I've been with the company, a long time. And this was one of those experiences that I got more phone calls from friends and family talking about how easy it was, how safe they felt. And so that's when I think, you're onto something really, really, really good. But the teams really deserve all the credit for just executing so amazingly well.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I think a key insight that you're raising is that feedback loop, the speed at which you can learn and then flex the experience based on those learnings and run that as a loop it's a key success criteria as we've been thinking about the business of experience. And there's just so much change afoot. And one of the things that you and I have talked about, even debated, is as we look forward, it's so important for all organizations to anticipate what's around the corner, what changes are here to stay, but also which ones are, let's say, more cyclical. And it's the structural versus cyclical change. And I'm just reminded of the two colors of the year. Pantone chose two colors. One was ultimate gray, which is representing the need for strong fundamentals, solid, safe, dependable. But also you have this other color, which is, I think they call it illuminating yellow, the idea for warmth, cheer, and maybe some fun. And one of the things that we've always had to debate is, as we look forward, are we leaning gray, thinking about safe experiences, basic experiences, or are we leaning yellow now, which is more fun and warmth? And how do you find the balance? I'd love for you to reflect on that as well.
Yeah, well, it's yes, in my opinion, both, which is why there's two colors. I think it's very poignant that is the perspective going into this year. I think we know that I know we believe that, there is no return to normal. This is our new normal and it's going to continue to evolve. And so I think, that desire you talk about, we saw this going into the holidays, that we needed to be incredibly safe. And that was a big concern for our customers, but they wanted us to bring the joy and the excitement of the holiday season to them. And so, yes, both. And so I think as we move forward, there's a few things I think we believe that are going to be very true, which is, one is that the customers are in control. And that's great because that it helps them feel the feelings we want, which is that idea of safety and, confidence. The second is that they have really high expectations for experiences, and it might not be informed by retail. It could be informed by a completely different industry. And so as we all navigate these times, our expectations change and they rise. Our curbside experience might help inform the way someone thinks about picking up, food at a restaurant or vice versa. And so I think we know that the expectations are increasingly higher, and we are going to need to continue to evolve to meet them. And then finally, that, customers starting digitally is on their journey is here to stay. If there was any doubt, this idea of the digital engagement being the primary start of the journey, I think we see as something that is absolutely enduring.
Yeah, no, that's great. So you talked about safety is here to stay, fun is back or is coming back. I hope. There's also this notion of sense of belonging in digital. I mean, those are four things that we're seeing across sectors as key characteristics of great experience. And I'm actually at home constantly in debate with my son. He's obsessed. One of them, at least the younger one, is obsessed with Among Us. It's a mobile app game, and I'm sure many of you have played it. But on the surface, it's actually a very, very simple game. The graphics are not overwhelming, but it does hit on all of those, actually. Of course, it's safe to play because it's mobile and you can play from home. It's digital, and so it's accessible through their phones. But it actually creates a sense of belonging, and it's very easy to start. And I've been blown away at how much he and his friends are playing this. And it's just another example of how you don't have to go over the top to deliver an experience that no one's ever felt before. Sometimes just getting back to those fundamentals is really the winning formula today.
Could agree more.
Yeah. So one of the things, Allison, speaking of my son, I will tell you, over the pandemic, I brought my younger to a Best Buy store, and the most remarkable thing happened. I mean, we went to actually recycle electronics, but this was his first time, I think, in a electronics store in some time, and perhaps ever. He's 11 years old. So the funny thing is, he, as a self-described tech enthusiast, was blown away and wouldn't leave. And one of the key debates in industry right now is around the reimagination for the role of space. And of course, retail is very much in the prime spotlight. I'd love to hear from you and how you thinking about the role of space. How's Best Buy thinking about the role of space? Will there be an in-person experience, and how will it change for customers 6, 12 months down the line?
Yes. Well, thank you first to hopefully we've created our next loyal customer in the youngest son of Baiju. And hopefully the older one is a fan too. So thanks for bringing him in. I think our first objective and primary goal, and we believe this, is that we want to meet customers' needs in whatever channel they want to engage with us in. So whether that's digitally, physically, in their home, via the app, virtually, we believe we can meet their needs regardless of channel. And that's the goal. We absolutely believe our stores have a role to play in that. And we hear it all the time from our customers. The opportunity to come in and touch and feel and experience the technology, to get advice, to get support, to be inspired by what's around them, is going to continue to remain an important role. And we also know the role our stores are playing from a fulfillment perspective. I mean, the stories we just talked about, we could have never pulled that out without our physical locations and without the amazing experiences that our associates create. So yes, the stores are still very much a cornerstone of our strategy and will be as we move forward.
Okay, no, it's great, and I will tell you, one of the things that struck him and me is how helpful the blue shirts were. So obviously the store associates, and one of the things that I've always been struck with in terms of the way you are dealing with experience is you're not treating customer experience and employee experience as two separate initiatives. Often we see that, which is employee experience is more the domain of human resources, perhaps, or talent, and then customer experience is more the front office team. You've really, from the outset, tried to bring those things together. And I'd like you to just talk a little bit more about that, because I actually think there's a crucial insight in that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been something that through this journey, we have, as a company, really grown to appreciate more and more. And so I am connected at the hip with our Chief Human Resource Officer for exactly this reason. And our teams work incredibly close together. I think this notion that customer obsession only happens if you have employee obsession. And that is how we teach it and talk about it in our walls. And it really is this idea around our culture and how much we value it, and how if our employees feel supported, respected, empowered, they will bring that same feeling and experience to our customers. And we have we talk a lot about our culture, and for those of you, or for those of us that have been with the company for a long time, we talk a lot about it as a family. And so when we first stood up the office, I used to talk to people about why this matters and what is my personal ambition in this. And I always thought, I really hope that our customers feel about us the way we feel about each other. And so that's something that every employee at Best Buy takes incredibly seriously. And, so we 100% believe that this idea of employee obsession driving customer obsession is a thing. And there are a lot of things we're doing to foster the right culture internally at Best Buy to deliver upon the customer experiences that we seek to give.
Oh, I think that's great. And I can't overstate this enough, which is those two things, again, in our research suggest they have to come together, and keeping them apart is a massive miss. And you talked about culture, and obviously culture is a key ingredient as we've been thinking about the business of experience. You talk about the culture of customer obsession. As Chief Customer Officer, this is a key priority for you. But practically, you're just one person. So how do you ensure the needs of the customers are reflected, as you say, in the heart of everything you do, in every decision that's made, in every meeting that's had? How is that possible, and how do you attack that in the organization?
Yes, it's I appreciate your perspective. It's not one person's job, because that would be impossible, and especially at our scale, right? So I think we picked the word unlock customer obsession very purposefully, because that means we are getting at that ability and desire for each and every employee to deliver these amazing experiences. And so what our team does is really just create the framework and the tools to help enable that. And so, I always joke that down the road, we've hopefully worked ourselves out of jobs, because the organization is behaving and acting so customer obsessed that we don't need a separate team creating these things to move towards that outcome. And so, for us, it's been about creating the framework, and that's been about what is the customer experience strategy that supports the brand strategy. So we have what we want to say to customers. How do we want them to feel when they experience us? We did this body of work before the pandemic, but it's been incredibly powerful in terms of when you say every customer who experiences Best Buy should feel confident, excited, appreciated. And then in the pandemic, we added safe. And I'm not sure it's ever going to go away. But when you unleash that as a tool in the hands of over 100,000 people, it really does give you something to ladder up to in all the work you're deploying and doing. That's just one of the tools. We've also then created actions employees can take to enable those feelings. And worked with our human resource department, our field leaders who live and breathe our customers every day, and worked on what are those behaviors that bring those feelings to life. And to our previous conversation, they're not dissimilar for how we treat one another. And so using some of those, we call them the employee actions, in our day-to-day, we created things like customer-led questions. What does the customer need, and how do you know? So all of these tools we put in the hands of the organization, and really the transformation is all them. And I'm super optimistic in their ability to continue to deliver. The things we've heard our associates do on behalf of customers, especially in this last year, have been simply inspiring.
Yeah, I agree. And it's really interesting how you've infused empathy into the culture and organization. And you mentioned associates. If you wouldn't mind just sharing some of their viewpoint on this, because in many ways they are the front line. They have to experience everything that customers experience as well. And in many ways, they're the ones that are taking on the brunt of learning the new experiences of curbside, but also, I would imagine, a lot of the fatigue that's incurring. So how are you also inspiring the employees, or how are you bringing them along on the journey?
Absolutely. Well, I think it goes back to where we talked about, this idea of employee obsession. And there have been numerous things we have done throughout the pandemic to continue to prioritize our employees. And I used the word hero earlier. I meant it. I mean, they are the true heroes of this last, year, and the things that they have done. And to your point, the operating model changes and the experience changes and everything that's been happening, having to navigate through that has been incredibly challenging, and they've done an exceptional job at it. So, I firmly believe that our associates are so passionate about what we're trying to do for customers, and that has really, really shown up in a meaningful way, over the last 11 months.
Okay, well, thank you for that. So, Allison, one of the things I said in the introductory remarks was this is really a moment. It's a experience renaissance, and it's allowing businesses to think about brand new experiences. I really believe that there's an opportunity here for leaders to reimagine. Have you really thought about the difference in leadership styles from today, what's required in the future? So as you think about yourself or you think about future business leaders, what are some of the new characteristics of a future leader that perhaps a year ago we weren't focused on, things like empathy and collaboration, and how have you seen that manifest at Best Buy?
Yeah, boy, this time has really pushed us all to practice the big L leadership, as someone once called it to me. I think as leaders, putting our teams in environments where they feel they can succeed is first and foremost. So and obviously that has to feel supportive, and just in empowering and enabling teams to do their best work, I think is so important in kind of this new time of leadership. I think we talked about it a little bit earlier, but this idea of the feedback loop, of really understanding what is getting in the way, how can we make things better? As leaders, we have got to listen more now than ever. And I think, as we've all been working and living at home constantly, it's really humanized the work experience. You and I were joking earlier about, my dog and kids are out of the house today, but that's not on most days. And that has really brought about a whole nother side of leaders. And we talk about this a lot internally, but this idea of vulnerability and giving ourselves grace and showing courage. And you've talked about empathy. These are leadership skills that we believe are quintessential in today's environment. And ultimately, they create this sense of belonging and this sense of higher purpose. And so I think this idea of setting your teams up for success and giving them the right environment to succeed, listening to the feedback loops around what isn't working, and then being more vulnerable and empathetic with one another and giving not only ourselves but our teams a lot of grace as we navigate this are all very, very important.
Oh, it's wonderful. I mean, it's interesting because I was recently looking through some job descriptions, and the words empathy, vulnerability, they don't actually show up still. And so even though we talk about how important these things are, we have to find a better way of making sure we're building up leaders to really realize those new characteristics. What advice would you give? We have a pretty wide audience here across the globe. Everyone's trying to reimagine a route to growth. Everyone is thinking about new paths to relevance. So what kind of advice would you give to the C-suite leaders out there who are seeking to redesign their growth formula, who are looking for new relevance, and are just really beginning this business of experience journey?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think that this idea that every employee can help drive the customer experience is the place I would start. Very early on in this journey for us, we did some training, and we did this exercise called 6 degrees of separation from the customer, so that whether you were a blue shirt in the stores or you were working in accounting, you found your way towards how the things you do every day impact the customer. And so this idea of everyone owns the customer experience is I think really powerful and a good place to start. I think making sure, we've talked several times about the feedback loops. You can't have that unless you have really well-developed kind of research and insights and measurement teams to be able, and data and analytics teams to fuel all of those insights. We talked a little bit about how we get them externally and internally. That is a core capability that you really can't get into this business of experience without having. So this idea of where are you getting those insights to constantly fuel that feedback loop is super important. I think also the talent that you have is something that we have really spent some time working on this last year, of augmenting kind of the great skills we already have in the company, skill sets around human-centered design, and really how we bring an outside-in perspective into the work is been really, really helpful for us. We had a handful of people who are really specialized in human-centered design. And that's something where we've gone out and really focused this last year to kind of build up our muscle in that space. And then this idea of measurement, how do you know if you're even making an impact, is something that we've been really trying to start leaning into. I think those are a few pieces of advice I would give, which is all about it's everybody's job. Make sure you have the right talent and capabilities, and know how you're making an impact.
Love it. It's everybody's job, make an impact. I mean, I don't think I could have imagined a better bookend to this conversation. So Allison, thank you. Thank you for your time today and for the fantastic insights on how Best Buy is becoming a business of experience. And thanks to South by Southwest for making it possible. And of course, thank you all. Please do send your thoughts and questions along. You can find Allison and me on LinkedIn or Twitter. Until next time, thank you.